Hi, everybody, and welcome to Reading Between the Lines. I'm Sarah, and I'm joined by my mom, Nicole. Hi, Mom.
Hi there.
So we are doing a mid-year check-in. As we're recording this, it's July 4th, and it's a great time to check in, see what we've been reading, see if there's any themes. Also, maybe we should talk about our goals that we had set for ourselves this year and how we're doing on that. But yeah, so why don't you kick us off with
Well,
mid-year?
okay. I've seen a lot of bookstagrammers and other book reviewers doing mid-year check-ins, and I thought it might be fun if we did the same thing. So I've looked at my stats, and I've read 61 books so far this year.
Okay.
My goal was I think I read 125 last year, and that's comfortable for me. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like beat any records, but I want to read as many books as I can. And the thing that really surprised me is that 16% of those 61 books I rated 5 stars, and the
Okay.
other 46% were 4 stars or more.
Oh, wow.
So I know I'm a high grader, um, but maybe I'm getting better at picking books that I know I'm going to like. And I
And maybe
haven't,
you are, and that's okay. That's great. That's what we all want.
yeah. Well, it made me want to re-examine my grading system too. I mean, what does a 5 star book have to do for me to get that rating? And for me, 5 stars is an amazing knock my socks off. I won't be forgetting it anytime soon. I loved it. I loved every minute of it book. So 5 stars, that's my highest rating.
Absolutely.
A
Yeah.
4 stars means it was a really good book and I thoroughly enjoyed it. 3 stars, it was okay. The book was okay for me. I liked it, and I think other people might really like it too. So that's kind of a high curve for books that are on the positive side. If I rate a book a 2, it means meh, not for me, and 1, it meant that I found it was dreadful.
And then do you mark DNFs a star rating for you or no?
No, I don't. I have a spreadsheet and I do mark them DNF. I don't count them toward my total of completed books.
Yeah.
And this year I didn't write down how many I DNF'd, but I'm gonna say it's maybe like 6 or 7 books I've started and just did not care to finish.
Okay. And the theme, tell me about the themes that you've been reading.
Well, I think one of the reasons that I've been enjoying my books more is that I haven't been reading quite as many thrillers. Thrillers are extremely popular and they get a lot of buzz, and a lot of people are talking about them on Instagram and YouTube or BookTube or whatever we want to call
Hmm.
it. And for years, I've just fallen for that. And I pick up these books and they're just not for me. I mean, most of the time I can get through them, but I think, well, what the heck did I just read? And,
Is it
you
too
know,
violent? What's the problem?
the problem is that they're usually so far-fetched and unrealistic. And a lot of times the character development is not as complete as I would like. I like
Yeah.
a book about people that I can relate to. I don't have to like them, but I want them to be believable on
Hmm.
some level.
Yeah. I noticed that I've only read two mysteries this year, and I enjoyed both of them, but I would not classify them as thrillers at all. So I have not been ready, I have not been reading thrillers whatsoever. And we've talked a little bit about this, but I feel like the entire thriller industry and market is super saturated. For the reasons that we just talked about, they're overly done, they're unbelievable, there's not great character development. Um, I did read a few great ones last year, and the difference was that they were classified as domestic thrillers,
Yes,
meaning
yes.
they were a little bit more believable in that um, this was, characters that were married to each other, and then, like there was a little bit more of an established reason. I don't know. It seems like it was just a bit more of an interesting story that could capture my attention.
Something that I'm thinking this could be the reason that maybe you liked these more domestic thrillers. I think publishers are too quick to slap the label thriller on a book
Yeah.
that is a family drama or a domestic drama or a psychological drama, and they call it a thriller. And I think they do that to get the attention of book buyers, and because thriller is such a popular thing right now. So maybe
Yeah.
those books that you read weren't strictly a thriller in that sense of the word.
I think that I also like the theme, or at least I'm discovering more of these tropes and themes that I like. And I didn't realize that I there were as many tropes and themes before we started this podcast, like over a year ago. I'm more, I guess I'm more cognizant now because we're having more in-depth discussions and reviews about these books,
Mm-hmm.
about what I do like and what I do not like. And I'm finding that I have certain types of books that I know will be an auto buy for me just based
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
synopsis. I really love the trope of people being married to each other, but someone has a totally different identity or a past life that the
Uh,
other spouse didn't know about. That's kind of a popular theme. I don't know what you call that, but
yeah.
and then the spouse who didn't realize this is still like kind of playing along for a little bit while they're investigating, like, who the hell am I actually married to? What is going on? Fascinating for me.
Yeah.
I like that. Um, well, for my book stats, sorry, we got a little on a tangent with thrillers there. Um, I read, uh, I didn't keep track as well as I thought. I think I've read about 25 or 26 books, and most of them have been fantasy. This has been a slow book year for me. I don't know why. I haven't had nearly as, actually, I don't know that I've only had one 5-star book this year. And I think that's been a bit of a problem. I've been having a little slump. Um,
You
and we'll
have
talk
a book
about some of those.
hangover.
Yeah. And then I get frustrated. So, for example, I just read a book. Actually, I've read several books this year while traveling, especially. And we know my rules about a travel book. It's really got to be amazing. I expect it's going to keep my attention, that it's engaging, that it has to be perfect. It's very high standards. I have to sit with you for 6 to 8 hours. I need you to entertain me. So,
Right.
I'm committed, and I'm in one sitting, like literally one sitting, page to, cover to end. I'm reading this book or listening to this book. And I've had so many disappointing experiences this year where I'm trapped on a plane with a book I can't
Oh,
stand.
that's too bad. That is really a shame.
So, um,
Well, one thing I wanted to interject when you said you've really been
yeah,
enjoying fantasy books, but you haven't read as many books as you had hoped to by this point. Look
yes.
at your page count. Fantasy
Mm,
books tend to be super long. They're like
you
500 pages
know,
long.
that's a good point. I'll have to go back and double check my page count. I think that's a wonderful idea. That
But
may
one
be,
fantasy book could equal two
yeah.
mysteries or two regular books.
And for me, for the past couple of years now, I've decided that I don't like fantasy. We've talked about this as well. I don't like all of this ridiculous world building and having 20,000 characters that I have to remember who they are, and the ridiculous names that I don't know how to pronounce unless I'm listening to the audiobook. It's just, there's like so much. There are several other fantasy genres that I do like. And so that doesn't mean that I don't like fantasy. I love a romantasy, a cozy fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll talk about some of those today. But anyway, so I've definitely found like my area of comfortability with fantasies, and I'll speak to some of those today. So yeah,
Well, we were going to talk about books that we've read in various categories. And
Yes.
I think we've got six or seven types of books that we wanted to mention and how they
Hmm.
affected us.
Yeah. Do you want to start with your best book so far?
The first thing we're going to talk about is what we each thought was the best book of the year for us.
Mhm.
And I had a little bit of a conflict. It's like pick your favorite child. But
Yeah.
for me,
Me.
it was a toss up between Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall, which we've already talked about on this podcast, and
That, yeah.
a book that I just very recently read called The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And I'm
Oh,
really leaning toward The Correspondent
okay.
by Virginia Evans, as it's going to be in my top 5 of the year for sure. And it may be the best
Wow.
one so far. It was published by Crown on April 29th of 2025. And The Correspondent is an epistolatory novel. And typically, an epistolatory novel is a book that is letters that are written. Usually, the letters are between just two people.
I
But
see.
in this book, we meet Sybil Van Antwerp, who writes to everyone. She she sits down every day, and she has a nice little setup in her apartment, and she has a desk, and she has all of her beautiful stationery and her pens. No email for Sybil. She writes her letters out longhand, and she writes to people she knows, to people she doesn't know. And by the end of the book, we feel as if we know Sybil completely. She writes to her brother, her best friend, a young man she's mentoring, the president of a university who is refusing to let her audit a class. She writes to famous authors such as Larry McMurtry and Ann Patchett. She writes to someone who's stalking her. And she has one letter that she writes regularly, but she never sends. And
Oh,
Sybil's in her 70s, and she's led a very full life. She was a distinguished attorney, and she was a mother and a wife, and now a divorcee. And Sybil writes not just to communicate with others, but to kind of document her life on the page and make sense of it. Sybil's been long set in her ways, and she's not a curmudgeon. I like a curmudgeon in my books, but
mhm.
Sybil is just, she likes things the way she likes them, but she's not particularly cranky. And while she's writing, we learn that she's had a recent diagnosis that's very serious, and that Sybil is going to need to open up to others and ask for help in the future. I don't want to say what it is because it would spoil it, but the book is about forgiving others and, most importantly, forgiving oneself. And the book is just about perfect in the way that Sybil's character is so thoroughly developed for the reader through all this correspondence. I highly recommend this book. I want everybody to read it. It was amazing. It was a really unusual book.
I love it. Okay. Perfect. Well, I think it sounds incredible. And you said you gave it 5 stars, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'd give it more if I could. It was
More
so
if you
well.
could.
And I
And
mean, we're not getting the point of view of anybody else. It's just Sybil and her reaction. Well, once in a while we do get to read a letter that somebody sent back to her.
mhm,
But I mean, we learn about Sybil and what's important to her, and um, what disappoints her. I mean, it's amazing. It's really
is
amazing.
there growth for the character? Because that's a hard thing to do, where like this is basically
Well,
a long monologue of one
yes,
character.
there's tremendous growth because we see how um, persnickety she is about things and with a lot of people. And she has always been in charge of her own decisions, her own life. And because of this recent diagnosis that she's really had to come to terms to the fact that her life is very likely going to change. And she's going to need to be less independent and rely more on other people, which she has never done before.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Well, sorry, did I meant to ask, have you read other books by this author?
No, I'm not sure if this was a debut or not. It may have been a debut,
Okay.
but I would certainly read more by this author if the
Yeah.
book came to my attention.
Okay. Well,
How about you?
my best book of the year I have talked about, and my best book of the year has 5 stars, and it is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. And we've talked a bit about authors who have been portrayed publicly or allegedly accused of things or saying things that are offensive or doing offensive things, whether they have or not. And we're not going to talk about that. But Neil is definitely in that category, and it's very hard to support authors where you're morally conflicted with their lifestyle or their choices. So I will say that this is a modern day, very gritty Alice in Wonderland type of novel. It's again, this is Neverwhere, and it's beneath London's hidden streets. It's a world of forgotten people, very eerie magic, and strange destinies. Angels bargain, assassins smile. There are tube trains that hold royal courts. Our main character is Richard Mayhew, and he helps to stop a mysterious girl named Dor, who has very mysterious powers. And he's pulled into this world of London below. It's a surreal and dangerous city that exists in the shadows. And he just wants to go home. And that's, again, like kind of the Alice in Wonderland theme here. He has to survive the impossible, do the impossible if he does want to go home. So I found this to be incredible because of the absolute amazing detail that was how the world was written. You feel like you're there. It's completely immersive, lots of wonderful details. But um, if you're familiar with London, I think that would help all the more. And also, the characters are so brilliantly written. They are very unusual, very unique, and very believable. So, yeah, I had that's the only 5 star book I've had this year. I hope to have more, but it's not looking like it so far.
That is
So,
such a dilemma when you read something that is so entertaining and you enjoy the work, and then you find that the artist may be somewhat on the reprehensible side of things, and you feel guilty that you enjoyed this book, and that's a terrible position to put a reader in. I'm really sorry for you.
I know. Well, he has a lot of Netflix series as well right now, and there's even talk of um, other directors taking over some of his project, not directors, but other writers or other people taking over some of his projects. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's putting a lot of people. It's inconveniencing a lot of people who are very deeply involved with expensive projects based on his work,
Wow.
and it's his, well, okay, now I am getting into like his behaviors and his actions have really hurt other people, whatever. I'm just going to stop there. You go
Well,
ahead with your next book,
well,
Mom.
okay. All right, we're gonna get off of that topic. The next book we're gonna talk about is a book that we just finished. And I just finished a book called The Compound by Aisling Roll, who that was published on June 24th of this year by Random House. And this book's getting a lot of hype as well. It's a great
Okay.
summer book, and it would be a wonderful choice because it's fast, it's propulsive, and well, let me just tell you, the book wasn't what I expected.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's set in a near dystopian future where contestants on a reality show are competing for prizes and to be the last one left on the compound. And the world is kind of a mess. There's references to a war that's going on, and the people at home are just obsessed with this reality show of these people they're on kind of a desert oasis, and the people on the reality show, there's 20 young people, half men and half women. And the people on the reality show they're quite beautiful, all of them. They have compelling personalities, and they're happy to be on this desert oasis competing for these great prizes, because the world, as they know it back home, is not that great right now. So I thought it was going to be a light and frivolous read, but it very soon took on a much darker tone. I think Love Island meets Lord of the Flies.
Oh God.
Our main protagonist is a young woman named Lily, and she's described as being very beautiful, but not that smart. She's a little bit hard to like because she seems a bit shallow, and man, she's really into earning these prizes. You can earn makeup, nice shoes. You can earn a lot of personal things like jewelry and valuable things, but you also have to compete as a group with the other contestants to earn really important things that you need on all together to exist in this house that they're in. And things like food, water, there could be treats. There's a beautiful swimming pool. You might have to do some kind of a competition where you can get a filter for the swimming pool, which will soon turn green and not be fun anymore unless you have the tools to take care of it. So anyway, this is a very long, ongoing show. It can last for months and months and months while these people compete against one another. And one of the stipulations is that every night you have to go to bed with another contestant and wake up with them next to you. And the first time that somebody wakes up alone, they get banished from the competition. Now, these people aren't necessarily having sexual relations with one another. They just have to pair up, male, female.
Right.
And sometimes, they get to like each other and they become boyfriend and girlfriend. But a lot of the times it's just an alliance that they make. So anyway, let's see, where was I? As relationships deepen, the show's producers escalate the challenges, forcing contestants through increasingly cruel and even dangerous trials that blur the line between entertainment and survival. So it gets dark. It gets quite dark quickly. And the main character was hard to like, but the book does show the dark side of reality TV shows, such as beauty standards that are unrealistic, body image comparisons, the lack of diversity. There's one black guy and one black girl on this show. No other ethnicities are represented. Exploitation of these people for entertainment, for the viewing audience, and overconsumption and greed and materialism is really a theme in this book. And the links that people will go to for fame and these materialistic items. So I gave it a 4 stars, which I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I should knock it back, 25, like a 3.75 or 3.5.
Yeah.
But it was very entertaining, and I think a lot of people will find it kind of a perfect read for summer, because it's not terribly deep, although it gives you more to think about than you might imagine when you first get into it. So that was the book I just finished.
It does sound like a good summer read, though. I think that has a lot of potential for some people. Well, the book that I just finished is fairly new. It came out in September of 2024 by Delacorte Press, and it's called The 13th Child. If you are looking for this book, the word 13 is spelled out, and the name, the author is Aaron A. Craig. Aaron wrote a book previously called The House of Salt and Sorrow, which was a fairy tale retelling of my favorite fairy tale, which is The 12 Dancing Princesses. And I enjoyed that book. It was so salty, not meaning like in the slang terms, but it was so ocean setting and so it was so coastal, and there were ships and moist wood, and all those like textures and things and sand, and you know I'm not describing this very well, but great. It was a great book. I really enjoyed it. Now this
What's
book
the
is
title of this one again, if you don't mind?
this one is called The 13th Child,
The 13th.
and it also made me think about The 13th Tale. Do you remember that book from 100
Yes,
years ago?
Diane
Well,
Setterfield.
yes, this book has nothing to do with that. Just to put it out there, I was kind of hoping it did. So let me explain about this book. This is a little girl named Hazel. She was never meant to lead an ordinary life. She is the 13th child in her family, and at birth, her parents do not want anything to do with her. They are overwhelmed by the other 12 children they already have. So they ask the gods to take her, and one of them accepts. And she has spent her life waiting for that moment where that God will come and take her away from her miserable existence. Now, Merrick is her godfather, and he is also known as the dreaded end. So I'll let you kind of figure out what kind of god he is. And he finally shows up, and he hands her a destiny that she never asked for, to become the world's the kingdom's greatest healer. And he's given her a magical gift to help. Hazel can instantly understand what's wrong with you and how to cure you. So she's destined to become this great doctor. She also is able to know when someone can't be saved, when they have to die, or they're beyond saving, or their death could be prevented. But if they do not die, then there will be other or more
Oh,
deaths
wow.
because
What a
this
burden.
person didn't die. So it's her job to help her godfather, who is death, finish what he has started. Um, anyway, she's got a lot of impossible choices, and this book takes you through her entire lifespan. And there is a little bit of royal intrigue. She's caught up in uh, helping a brooding prince. She has to help save the king or not save the king. She has to decide if letting him die is the best thing. It was a very beautiful type of fairy tale retelling. I don't know what retelling it was. This is not a story or a fairy tale I've ever been familiar with. Um, and it was very atmospheric. There's not a lot of characters, but I did not enjoy this book. I was
Really?
stuck.
You
I
made
did,
it sound so good.
I know. I did not like this book because there is zero like romanticy at all
Okay.
involved here,
All right.
um, which is fine. There is zero mystery here. You're just like year over year, this, following Hazel through her life. I don't know. I just felt like it was so slow,
Uh,
and I
yeah.
didn't like a lot of the side characters, and I felt like it was, this little girl, this woman's fate has already been decided for her, and you kind of know how this is all going to end anyway. So I just it wasn't for me.
So it sounds like
I
it was like one anecdote of her doing something, another one, and another one until the book was over, and it was like, what was the
Yeah,
point?
yeah. It wasn't for me. I just didn't love it, but I think other people would
Sad.
absolutely enjoy it.
Honestly, the setup sounded great. The 13th
Yeah,
child. Okay.
yeah. So, what book are you currently reading?
Well, the book that I am currently reading is, I think a lot of people are going to like this book. It's called
Oh,
Welcome to Murder Week by Karen Duquesne, and it was published June 10th of this year by
okay.
Gallery Scout Press. And we meet Kath, who has just lost her somewhat neglectful mother, and she's feeling some ambivalence about her mother's death because she and her mother were never that close. Her mother let her
Mm,
down a lot, disappointed her quite a lot.
yeah.
And anyway, she has to go through all of her mother's things, and she's going through her mother's papers, and she discovers tickets to a murder week vacation that her mother has booked for the two of them in a quaint English village. You know, those dinner parties where you go and you solve a murder? Well, this is a whole week spent in an English village in the Peak district in England. And she and her mother were going to do this thing together, and they never did anything together. So Kath is totally mystified, but she decides not to let the ticket go to waste. She gets a refund for her mother's portion of the trip, but she decides she's going to go on her own. And she's confused and intrigued by the discovery, and I think she's very brave not to let the experience go to waste. So she steps out of her comfort zone and she travels to this picturesque village where she meets an assortment of other quirky and fun fellow sleuths. She's put up in a cottage where she has two roommates. One of them is a really sweet gay fellow, and a woman who's in her 50s. She's described as in her 50s and kind of motherly. And anyway, the three of them are going off together throughout the village to try to pick up clues to solve whatever. Somebody dies. The local beautician supposedly dies, and it's hilarious. They're describing they have to go to the murder scene, and the salon owner is lying on her stomach, but she keeps moving because she's not comfortable laying on the floor. Anyway, it was. I'm only halfway through it, not even halfway through, and it's amusing, and the characters are interesting, and I think. There's also there have been references to other classic British mysteries that if you read mysteries and you've been reading them for a while, you'll pick up that, oh, that's an Agatha Christie, that's a whoever. So anyway, I'm enjoying the book so far, and I have read in the description of the book that there is an underlying deeper theme of grief, reckoning with the past, and self-understanding. So those things are ahead for me in this book, but I think a lot of readers will enjoy this book. Another nice one for summer. I don't think you're going to have to think too hard while you're reading this one, and it's charming. So
it sounds super cute.
That's Welcome to Murder Week.
And is it an audiobook or a Kindle or a hard copy?
I'm reading a hard copy. I actually bought this at my local independent bookstore, and I don't do that very often because I buy so many books. I tend to I get them on Amazon because they're less expensive, but I am reading a physical copy on this, and I did support my local bookstore.
Good for you. And let me borrow it when you're done.
I will. I've got another one too. I've got the S.A. Cosby book, the King of Ashes. I got to pass on to you.
That does sound
very,
good,
very different, completely different book from this one.
Yes. Okay. So the book that I'm currently reading is a horror book.
Really?
I'm actually listening to it. It's called Bunny by Mona Awad. Now, Bunny, if you're a big fan of horror, this is one that's kind of a cult favorite because it's so very different. And it's a really weird book. I already know that the ending is really up to your interpretation. The entire book is really up to your interpretation about what is going on. So
I mean,
here's
I have to say is that a horror book titled Bunny is very ominous sounding.
It is. Samantha Heather Mackey is definitely not your typical MFA student. She has a scholarship to a very prestigious college where she is a poetry major, and she's very much a loner. And this is the ultra elite Warren University. She's more at home in her own twisted imagination than around her fellow writers, especially the unnervingly chipper, ultra rich girls in her cohort who each call each other Bunny. And so there's like this clique, the bunnies. They're not the bunnies, they call each other Bunny. Then, so she hates these girls with a passion, and she has a lot of classes with them. And then she gets invited to one of their infamous parties. And of course, against all logic, she goes. And what follows down the rabbit hole here is this very weird, wild descent into their pink glazed world one that's way far darker than you could have possibly imagined. And Samantha starts joining in on their off campus workshops. This is a very bizarre and very much possibly supernatural writing ritual that they begin to dabble into. This kind of reminded me so far of like the movie Heathers meets The Craft, and anyway, those were like 90s and 80s kind of hit movies. Her grip on reality really starts to unravel, and the only people that she did ever trust that are in her life were wondering, are they real?
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot more to this, but this book is about the ultra privileged, deep loneliness, toxic femininity, and the eerie places that our creativity can take us. I definitely recommend this. Is this a book that's bloody and gory? Not exactly. It's super creepy and it's very psychological in terms of horror.
Okay. All right.
And our narrator is very unreliable.
Okay.
That's all I'll say. This is definitely a book that if you've read this, I would love to discuss it with anybody because I have made a decision halfway through this book about what I think about everything. So, or what I think is going on. Anyway,
Okay.
that's the book I'm
All right.
currently reading. And that was the Goodreads Choice Award nominee for horror of 2019 by
Wow. It must have a high
published.
rating, I suppose, on Goodreads.
It's very popular, like because it is so weird. Oh, dark academia for sure. Like obviously that goes without saying. This is like super dark
Right.
academia vibes, which is lovely if that's also your thing. So there's a lot of pluses about this book.
Okay.
So,
All right.
what is a book that you did not meet your expectations so far this
Well,
year?
I hate to be too mean about a book, but because I know it's an effort that someone has gone to produce for our entertainment. But a book
Yeah.
that did not meet my expectations was The Sicilian Inheritance by Joe Piazza, published April 2nd, 2024 by Dutton. And this book, again, is very popular, and I am an outlier for sure. Most people who
Mm,
read this book really enjoyed it. So the book started with the tired trope of the main character, whose name is Sarah, inheriting a surprise piece of property from a relative. Ah, how many times have we had that,
yeah.
in the book? Anyway, so the property is in Sicily, and supposedly the book it was based on the author's own family history. So yes, the property was inherited, but I mean, it really did happen. So Sarah,
Okay.
our current day character, is going to go to Sicily and take a look at this property. But there's a built in mystery concerning the disappearance of the main character's great grandmother, whose name was Serafina.
Mm,
And her great grandmother, in actual fact, did disappear. The author's written this highly fictionalized
version.
retell of what she think. I mean, because I don't think anybody ever solved the mystery of what happened to Serafina
Wow.
or whatever her grandmother's name was. Anyway, supposedly in the book, Serafina was murdered by the mafia in the early 1900s. And the book had a dual timeline, which switched back and forth between Sarah in the present day trying to solve this mystery and interview people and get information on what could have happened to her great grandmother, and to Serafina, who we get imagined glimpses into her life in the early 1900s leading up to her disappearance.
Mm,
And honestly, I just wasn't that interested in either one of these people. It was
yeah.
promoted as a page turner and I found it anything but. It was just dragging. I had the physical book and I tried to read it and it was going nowhere, so I bought the audio. I mean, for a book I didn't like, I sure put a lot of effort into
Gave it a
trying.
good try.
I tried to give it a try, but I ended up DNFing it at about 30% in. I just didn't
Yeah.
care. So
Yeah.
that book let me down for sure because I fell for the hype and bought two different versions of the book and in hopes that I would enjoy it too, but I didn't.
Well, I'm going to be controversial in my next statement here. Um, the book I'm about to talk about that did not meet my expectations this year led me, it was the second book or the second or third book this year that I had purchased from Book of the Month that made me cancel my membership to Book of the Month Club
Oh my
because
God,
in my attempt to read more diversely, every single book that I pick, I hate. I even was able to like get a credit for one or two of them this year that I thought were garbage. Anyway,
really? I didn't know they did that.
this book in particular is not garbage. This is not a bad book. This is a book that many people enjoy and have liked. This is 6 Days in Bombay by Alka Joshi. And
Oh, I've read many things by this author, but not that book.
yeah, this is a book that takes place, I'm not, I'm forgetting the time period. I think this is in the 30s or 40s. Anyway, this is a celebrated painter named Mira Novak, and she's admitted into a Bombay hospital after having a miscarriage. And our main character is Sana, and she's very captivated by this woman. Both Sana and this artist, Mira, they are both half Indian and half English. And having English fathers, but who have left the country and are with living with their Indian mothers. So Mira is extremely bold. This is the artist. The artist is really bold. She's worldly. She's everything that Sana is not. And they create this nice, unlikely friendship. But Mira dies under very mysterious circumstances, and Sana finds herself at the center of the suspicion of the death. So Sana's left with a very cryptic note and a handful of Mira's very favorite paintings, and she embarks on this journey across Europe to deliver them to the people from Mira's past that were important to her. Each stop unravels these secrets about Mira's life, and Sana is able to really start to come to terms with some of her own issues in her own life. Um, this is a story about art and identity and very messy relationships with parents and the puzzle pieces that make us who we are. This, unfortunately, was a very slow and tiresome and frustrating book. While I liked all of these characters and this ticks off like great boxes, um, for me, I just like I got almost 60% through the book, and we haven't even started this whole supposed like European adventure that's supposed to happen. So I DNF'd it. I got so tired of this. Like, when is this book gonna actually get going? So there's that.
I have read, I think, two other books by this author, and they were both set in India in the past. Like, I don't know, I'm going to
Hmm.
say in the 1800s, maybe.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sorry I don't remember the titles. If I were cleverer with technology, I'd open another window, but I'd lose everything if I did. But I really did enjoy both these other books, but I will concur with your description of them being very slow paced, very character driven.
I
And
don't mind if it's slow paced, slice of life with great characters. Like, that's fine. Just like prepare me for it.
right.
And there's got to be some descriptions of like really good meals.
Well,
That's
I mean,
fine.
but if the whole thing
But
is just getting bogged down like in a sloggy middle,
yeah,
it's hard to get past that a lot of times.
yeah.
So
So,
I'm
all
sorry,
right.
but for all of our listeners, do give this author's other previous books a try because they
Yeah.
really were an
And
interesting
like,
slice of Indian history.
absolutely. And I appreciate some of the culture that I did get to learn about and some of the culture and the dynamics within Indian families during this time period. All good stuff. It just didn't hold my attention. So anyway,
Yeah.
Mom, tell me about a book that has exceeded your expectations or really
So
surprised you this year.
I have a book that I absolutely was dumbfounded at how much I enjoyed this book. And the reason being, I didn't read a lot of description or hype ahead of time. I just went into
Oh,
this book blind. All I knew about it, let me tell you the name of the book. The book is The Entire Sky by Joe Wilkins, published July 2nd, 2024. So last summer, a year ago, by Little Brown and Company. And all I knew about this book is that it was set in Montana and in the 70s, and it was on set on a ranch, a sheep ranch. That's all I knew. And I was really surprised because the book turned out to be American fiction at its very best. It was, if you like Cormac McCarthy, um, that's probably a close comparison of the type of reading, very spare conversations, but the description of the countryside was just amazing. Um, and it was set in rural Wyoming. And we meet Rene Brouchard, who was a retired rancher who's grieving the recent loss of his wife. And he and his estranged daughter, Leanne, are struggling to figure out their strained relationship. And Leanne is not happy with her marriage. And Renee is so depressed about losing his longtime wife that he's contemplating suicide. And he decides he's going to just leave their home in town and go to his ranch out in the country. He has a guy that works for him that tends the sheep, and it's getting to be lambing season. And I don't know if you've watched any veterinary shows, but it seems like lambs always have trouble giving birth. There's always some tricky complication. And so Renee thinks he's going to go check in on the ranch, see how the lambing season is progressing, and possibly take his own life because he just sees no reason to go on. So meanwhile,
mhm.
in Seattle, and you know the in the 70s in Seattle, it was really the grunge music scene. And we have a young man named Justin who has a striking resemblance to Kurt Cobain, it turns out. And he just is Kurt Cobain is his idol. And he also has quite a bit of talent, Justin does, at playing the guitar. Somehow he managed to get his hands on a guitar. But Justin has had a pretty miserable upbringing. His mother is very neglectful and keeps getting involved with men that are violent and don't like Justin. And there have been several times when Justin has had kind of taken to the streets and supported he's 15 and he earns money by busking and, singing on the street and getting money for food. And finally, his mother decides, well, she's really getting serious with one of these no account horrible men that she's been dating. And he doesn't care for Justin at all. So Justin is being sent off to live with an uncle who recently got back from what war were we in? And this, and it was probably Iraq or someplace. Anyway, the uncle has some serious mental problems, and he has a business where he's doing something in forestry in Washington state. And what he's doing is barely legal, and what he does is he makes Justin work for him. Justin is not allowed to go to school. He is actually locked in a camper trailer most of the time when he's not working for the uncle. And the uncle's abuse of Justin progresses and it ratchets up to the point where Justin takes matters into his own hands, commits an act of violence against the uncle, and runs away for good. And he gets picked up and he's taken on, he's a hitchhiker. And luckily, he doesn't get into too much trouble doing that, but he ends up in Wyoming on Rene Bouchard's sheep ranch property. Well, these two people meet one another, and Renee, who's a very compassionate, kind man, takes Justin under his wing, and he allows him to work on the ranch and feeds him and lets him get involved with learning about the sheep industry and how to help these sheep give birth to their little lambs. And for the first time, the 15-year-old Justin feels like what it's like to have a family. And it's very touching. And the Renee's daughter Leanne turns up, and of course, at first she's alarmed that Renee's taken in this. They don't know he's a runaway, but they suspect he is. But what happens is Justin's past comes, it catches up with him and jeopardizes this new found family situation that that he's come to, he's come to think of this family and this place as his home.
Yeah.
And the author, with lyrical prose and vivid Montana landscapes, explores the themes of trauma, belonging, and the redemptive power of chosen family. And when I finished this book, I was reading outside on the back porch, and I just had tears streaming down my face. I couldn't speak. And your father got very alarmed, and he said, "Oh, what's happening? Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it?" I couldn't even speak. I was just so overcome. It took me 24 hours
Oh,
to get over this.
wow.
And but your father and I did end up having a really deep conversation about the deterioration of the American family and young men who are the targets of abuse. And it's a terrible situation. And I'm not sure that we came up with the answers, but we certainly had a very meaningful conversation about it. But this book surprised me like none other that I've read in quite a long time. So I really
Wow.
recommend it. It was well written. The subject matter was important, and you really came to care about these characters. And yeah, it was
Yeah.
good. It was really good.
Awesome. Incredible. Wow. Who was the author again?
Joe Wilkins, and he looks like a sheep rancher himself. When you look at his picture on the dust jacket, he just, he's scruffy. He's got a beard. He's got a flannel plaid shirt. I mean, he didn't dress up for his author photograph, that's for sure.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. Yeah, a lot of people are going to want to pick that one up. For me, a book that really exceeded my expectations was The River Enchanted, or sorry, A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, which you had
Uh-huh.
recommended. This is from 2022. Harper Voyager was the publisher. And our main character, again, this is a fantasy. It was lovely because it has a very Celtic or Scottish kind of vibe to this. Um,
Mhm.
Set in maybe the late 1800s or early 1900s. That's the kind of vibes we're going for. And our main character, Jack, he thought he'd left the magic of Cadence, which is an island that he lived on. And there are girls that, like little girls, that begin to start vanishing from the island. So he's called home by his laird, who is the Scottish lord of the island. And he's basically summoned and has to return. So he comes back. So he's basically been living in the normal real world and has to return to this very strange magical island that he's from. There are a lot of spirits, tartans. Your tartan plaid can be armor. I've mentioned this book already a little bit briefly, but I loved this book. It was haunting, lyrical,
Mm.
enemies to allies, ancient magic. Some of the characters in this book are actual like elemental spirits, which I thought was cool. But then we have this lovely, not lovely, but lovely to me because it was intriguing mystery that is happening, and you want to find out like who is snatching up all these poor little girls. And it was really well done and well written. And I would read just about anything else that Rebecca puts out.
Wow, did you read a hard copy of it?
Yes, I did, and I super enjoyed it. This is actually the first in a series. I'm not sure if
Really?
it's a duology. It might actually just be a duology.
Yeah.
There are two couples that are featured in these books, and the first book is featuring one of the couples, and I think the next book features like the
Oh,
second
okay.
couple. So yeah, tell
Well,
me about a book you
you made me want to add that to my TBR for sure. That sounds really good.
absolutely. It was really so good. Just refreshing. So tell me about a book you can't wait to read.
There's so many. I have so many books. I've been buying books like a crazy person. I bought books from Amazon. I bought books from a book of the month. I bought books on Pango. I have a whole shelf full of books. There must be 2 dozen of them, but which one am I going to pick? I think the next book that I'm going to read is Ghostwriter by Julie Clark. I bought this one from Book
Oh,
of the Month. It was published June 3rd of this year by Source Books Landmark. And I don't know too much about it, but the book is described as a twisty mystery about an estranged father and daughter who are reunited when the daughter is persuaded to write her father's memoir about the night his siblings were murdered. So I do know a little bit more about it. The father, as a kid, was alone in the house with his siblings when the siblings were murdered. And he was, for a long time, he was suspected of committing the deed, but nobody could prove it. He became a very successful horror writer and had a long career writing horror books. And now he wants to write his memoir. And his daughter has been selected as by him as the only person he wants to write the memoir. And
interesting.
she doesn't even like her father very much because he's beside this unsavory incident when he was younger. I guess he's not been that great a dad. So anyway, she has a lot of misgivings about settling down with him and listening to his story and writing his memoir. That's all I
Wow.
know.
I've heard of this one and I didn't pick it up, but I'm curious to see how it goes for you and if you like it. So,
I also like the double meaning of the title, Ghostwriter.
yes, yes, I think that's pretty clever. Um, okay, a book that I can't wait to read. There's two that I want to talk about. The first one I'm just mad about, which is the next Molly Maid book, which I think is The Maid's Secret by Nita Prose. I had pre-ordered this and paid for it from Barnes and Noble, and then I got
Yeah.
an email on April 8th that said, "Oops, sorry, here's a refund. We oversold."
Oh,
And
for
I was
heaven.
so mad because I was like, "That is the whole point of pre-order. Like, I claimed a book,
Right. They now know how many to order.
right? Why do I not get one?" I was so
Well,
mad. Anyway,
give your money to some other bookstore.
well, I did buy another book that is on my shelf right now, and I've noticed that I have not read any sci-fi this year. And one of my favorite sci-fi authors has a couple new books that I need to read. This is called The Stardust Grail by Yumi Kase. So also a Japanese American author, which kind of checks off more boxes for me. And this book synopsis sounds really silly. I bought it anyway, but I'm not excited about it, but I'm going to read it. The cover is also beautiful. Um, this is basically about an art thief turned grad student and going back on this like space quest to steal something that might be an artifact that could save
Oh, wow,
an
a
entire
sci-fi heist
species.
book. I love
Like
that.
one last heist kind of vibe
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
But also it kind of is giving a Project Hail Mary vibes
Right.
where she kind of has to decide between like should a species live or not? Anyway, it's interesting. Um, we'll see. I do enjoy this author's writing. The last book that she did took place. It had a bird theme, but it took place in space, where all of these like young girls were groomed at an early age to be kind of like Earth's last hope and go find another place to live. And off they went. In the meantime, the scientists back on Earth were going to try to figure out how to like cure the, the blight that was killing all the food and the crops and the animals. Anyway,
Right.
so that was interesting as well. But that would be the next one, The Stardust Grail by Yumi Kitase.
And is this book in your possession?
It is. It's on my shelf.
Okay. All right. Well,
So one
next
one
time we'll
last
have
heist in space.
next time we'll have to talk about our experience with these books we couldn't wait to read.
Right. Well, that'll wrap it up for us for today for
Well,
our mid-year wrap up. And this was really fun. A lot of great conversations to be had here about some of
yeah,
these books.
yeah, right, right.
So, all right. Well, thanks, Mom. This was lovely. And thanks for listening, everybody. And we will see you next time.
See you next
Bye.
time.